everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Armchair Crew Chief. My name is Jordan, and we had a wild ride out there at Talladega this past weekend with the Xfinity racing and the Cup racing going on. So let's go ahead and dive into it. Starting off with Xfinity, we had an RCR leading on qualifying. Austin Hill did get the pole. Sheldon Creed got second. Moving on, it was super speedway racing, back and forth, a lot of two-lane. Some people tried to make a third-lane run. It was up and down on that guy. A lot of moving, a lot of passing made on the pit road. So, I mean, it was kind of like what we expected with a super speedway racing, going fast, crazy wrecks. We had two vehicles get airborne in two separate wrecks, the 02 car as well as the 11 car. But as of right now, those guys are good. Blaine Perkins, they've been issuing statements for him. He was kept for observation for after that race at the hospital. They said everything was good. They just wanted to keep him for observation to see how he was going. So yeah, our Dash for Cash guys, John Hunter, Josh Berry, Allgaier, and Custer, pretty much everybody except for Custer got wrecked out. And, unfortunately that happened to them. And it, pretty much gave Custer the Dash for Cash early on in the racing. So that was kind of one of those things that you kind of look for inside of a race and in a race within a race with the Dash for Cash. And that kind of fizzled out because of all the wrecks that were going on. So hey, it was super speedway racing. It's hard to kind of just keep going on with that. Just by leaving it at that, it was, we had our first win. We had another first time winner this year. It was actually a second career win. Jeb Burton, the son of Ward Burton, ended up winning the race with Sheldon Creed coming in second and Parker Kligerman coming in third. Parker had a pretty good, strong showing towards the end of the race. I mean, he fought his way back up, and Sheldon Creed was up there for most of the time. As you saw, he started second, so he finished in his same starting position. But towards the end, it was getting to be good racing, I thought. Just back and forth. This also gave Jordan Anderson Racing, if you guys remember, he was one of the guys trying to get out of the truck. I believe it was last year when the truck got on fire. He has his own Xfinity team. So they run 27. I think they run the 23 as well sometimes in Xfinity, or they do run the 23. But, that's good for him. We got a new winner out there. It's not just, Junior Motorsports or Joe Gibbs Racing and even RCR. So it's good to see some of the younger guys coming back in, or not even just younger guys, but new teams, fresh teams coming in and actually getting wins. Colleague has been one of the guys that came up a few years ago and started doing well with AJ Allmendinger. So in that standpoint, I thought it was nice to see somebody else win. We also had some other guys, Cesar Baccarella. He was sixth with Alpha Prime. So he had his best career finish, but he also is giving Alpha Prime some move up there. And I think it's good to see this, as I was saying earlier, it's good to see this fresh blood coming in and kind of seeing some of the racing. So we're going from this huge racetrack to a small racetrack, and we'll see what happens. As I was saying, Cole Custer won the Dash for Cash with his fourth place finish. The other four guys didn't even really finish the race. So moving forward for our Dash for Cash over at Dover Speedway, we're going to have Jeb Burton, Sheldon Creed, Parker Kligerman go ahead and, as well as Custer, go for that Dash for Cash. And it is the final of the four Dash for Cashes at Dover. I think those are fun. It's extra money that these smaller teams like a Jordan Anderson Racing could use, but it also brings on more competition within the race that, us sitting at home can sit there and not have to watch the front racing, but go back and watch the back racing also. So, we'll move on. We're going to be moving on to Dover. The Dover A Game 200 will start at Saturday at 1:30. FS1, PRM, and then Sirius XM Racing has that. So just looking at the standings for the Xfinity Racing, we'll just go ahead and go into the playoff standings here. Austin Hill, John Hunter, those are both your multiple race winners. Chandler Smith, Allgaier, Sammy Smith, Josh Berry, Riley Herbst, Jeb Burton, Cole Custer, and Sheldon Creed are your top 10 within the playoff rankings. We only have about 5 winners here so far, so there's room for opening. I mean, I know some of the Cup Series guys have taken some wins from these guys, but, it's what's expected pretty much. So, our winners who are not so much locked in unless we get more than the winners. We got Austin Hill, John Hunter, Chandler Smith, Sammy Smith, Jeb Burton in as our winners for the Xfinity races this year. So we're moving on to Dover, as I was saying, this weekend, and then we're just going to keep moving on. I think it's in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we have Darlington coming up, and we've already started seeing paint schemes, throwback paint schemes popping up in both the Cup and in the Xfinity race for throwbacks for guys, and we'll discuss those a little bit later in the next coming weeks going forward with that. So that kind of just shows what's going on there. Moving on to the Cup Series. Excuse me. Moving on to the Cup Series here. We had a lackluster race. I mean, it was somewhat like the other racing going on with the Xfinity Series. It didn't seem like you could make a lot of headway, though, on the track. I don't know. I know some people were not liking that we, this new car is kind of taking some of the racing out of it. I've heard and I keep hearing, and sometimes I do agree with that, where these races are they just get dull and boring. And so, maybe they can make changes to that. I know they tried doing that with the aero package for the smaller tracks. I don't know how much that's helped with it. It still is like, if you get out there, you kind of get tired of watching the front race because they're leading 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds, and they barely come back and 1 second win over everybody. So with that being said, going into qualifying, we had Denny, Almirola, Gibbs, Briscoe, Blaney, Bell, Truex, Logano, Larson, and Buescher round out your top 10 on qualifying. So it was, as I said, it was kind of like a dull race to an extent. I mean, it started getting interesting, but then it got frustrating. Everybody knows on this podcast, I am a 19 fan, first and foremost, and I do like a lot of the other guys, Blaney, Corey LaJoie. He did pretty good. He did pretty well this race, back and forth. He did get collected in a wreck, which kind of stinks, but moving forward, it's Talladega. A lot of people got collected in a wreck, and we'll kind of discuss that towards the end here on the Xfinity or on the Cup Series. It was mostly a back and forth with up top. Bubba Wallace came up and he managed to get up towards the front. He was running up there. Ty Gibbs was running up there. I can't remember what stage it was. I think it was the second stage, middle of the second stage. Ty Gibbs and Bubba Wallace were leading the outer line, and then you had a Denny and a couple other guys coming up behind him, a Truex. And I remember hearing on the Truex radio, we got to get the 54 and the 23 out of the way because they can't lead this line. And it seemed like you could see that where that line kept progressively going backwards and backwards. They had a car to get up front, but they couldn't handle the clean air in their line, and just the racing back and forth kind of got dull because they wouldn't get out of the way, and the other guys couldn't form a strong enough line to move out and make a third line to keep going. So the bottom line just kind of started moving forward, and I don't know what would happen. They kind of moved up the top line. So it was back and forth, but what I noticed was the 54 and 23 were significantly weaker than like when the 19 and 11 were up there leading the top line or the bottom line. And they just didn't have, I don't know if it's inexperience at this level. I know Bubba won at this race, but then again, you got to remember that was a rain shortened race. So it wasn't a full race. I don't know what would have happened if they ran that full race, but a win's a win. So I'm not going to take that away from them, even though it was rain shortened. But I saw Joey Logano. He kind of ran and made a big wreck. It's just tough with these races, these big races. Some people get either their spotter calls them out, says they're clear when they're not really clear, et cetera, et cetera. It's one of those tough things with those guys and how that goes with the racing. You're going to have wrecks. You're going to have the big one. I mean, you're going to collect a lot of people. It's inevitable with these guys. Cup has been good to kind of reduce that some, but you still have it. And then when you have cars like this that you got a couple guys moving back and forth. You got a couple guys that are just like making a lot of ground on. I mean, that's how Truex got up there. Just making a lot of ground up on the top of going through pit and doing a pit strategy. But then, you get caught out because a lot of this super speedway racing is team pitting, and Toyotas, they draw their short stick because they're smaller. I don't know why they don't team up with like a Ford or Chevrolet and going with them. They go in together, and you're talking what, 6, 7, 8 Toyotas. 6 true good Toyotas. I say good as a subjective term, but you have those guys, and they get back on the track like what happened at the end of stage 1, and they're running in the back of the pack because they can't keep up with the draft, or like when the Fords come in, or when the Chevys come in, because they have so many more. They have the numbers, so that kind of sees some things go there. We did have a wild first few pits. I believe it was Briscoe in the 14. He spun out going onto the pit road. The 45 of Tyler Reddick spun out. Tyler Reddick almost took out almost all the Toyotas, if you ask me. When you go back and you watch their first pit, he spun right in front of everybody going down the pit road. I don't know. He had the guys on the broadcast said that he had too much rear brake bias. I guess I could see that happening, but man, he just spun like crazy. And so that was an interesting thing. But going back on Joey Logano, he was one of the guys that kind of got caught up with one of these wrecks towards the final lap. And there were quite a few wrecks out there. There was one, I think that might be the Logano one, where he just pulled up and he didn't have enough go. And it's like, what are you going to do? You got the guys behind him that are like, I can't stop. I can't slow down, or I'm going to get rear-ended. And that just caused a wreck because he didn't have enough momentum to keep going. And that the second line, the top line that he was going into, just kind of accordion, and boom, you had your accident. Towards the final laps, it was a fuel strategy race. This race, we had Ty Gibbs. Actually, I think he was second in the final restart, and he ended up dropping down to the apron because he ran out of fuel and he couldn't go. I think Eric Almirola ran out of fuel because you had Truex up there and a couple of these other guys that were running that second line, and they got a little bit of a gap. And Almirola ended up going up top. So I think he ran out of fuel, and he ended up just causing a headache for a lot of these guys because he didn't go down, he went up. And it's like, come on, dude, you got to do a little bit better. towards the end, um, Bubba Wallace ended up causing a big wreck on some of the blocking that he had. Um, Tony Stewart came out and said on the broadcast, um, he did what he had to do because he was up there blocking. I think he, I think he just couldn't handle it. I'll call him out on that. And hey, I'm an armchair crew chief. I'm not racing these cars, so he can throw, if he ever listens to this, he can throw stones back at me saying I don't know what I'm saying and this and that. But I don't think he has enough experience up there. I mean, I put him up there with like Corey LaJoy. Yeah, he's got more experience than Corey LaJoy running up front, but I think that he blocked too. Either his spotter communicated it too late, Bubba's brain didn't translate it quick enough, and just that blocking that he did caused the big nasty wreck. And so with that, we had our final. That was on that final lap. It was a crazy wreck going on there. Kyle Busch ended up finishing first, Ryan Blaney second, Buescher third, Briscoe fourth, Keselowski fifth with that. And I mean, when I say crazy wreck, it caught Truex, it caught. I think Larson got knocked out earlier, which we'll talk about that one after this wreck. I mean, it caught a lot of people, and so those guys kind of got moved forward, and it stunk. And, it is what it is. It happens. It's Talladega. I think with some of these guys coming through, would it be better if they didn't? If some of the other people were up there, probably, but it's hard to tell. I'm sitting there throwing stones at Bubba, saying he's inexperienced, but then at the beginning, I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt and saying, it could have happened to anybody up there. So that was crazy. I know one of the wrecks that happened, and I don't think it happened with this one. It happened a little bit earlier than that. Kyle Larson got spun, and he got walloped. I mean, he got hit hard in the passenger side of that car the right side of the car by Ryan Preece. I mean, it bent the frame on the roll cage, really nasty. I mean, but Ryan Preece, he was trying to get out of the way, and he just kind of moved, and he thought he was clear, so he kind of started, accelerating, and then Kyle Larson came up and boom, it was pretty wild. I mean, it was not as wild as these races, as the wrecks for Xfinity, where you had, Blaine Perkins getting airborne, his tire flying off, which I didn't even mention earlier. His tire flying off, bouncing, hitting Cass Grala's car. I mean, that was wild. But I mean, this one was more of, I would say, a harder hit. Yeah, you get airborne, and it is a hard hit, but you're hitting the ground. You're not having another car come at you hitting. So I mean, they both have their you don't want to see them, but at the same time, everybody walked away from everything. Blaine Perkins, he probably took the brunt of it because he was in for observations. But anyway, going back into the Cup, yeah, that was a nasty wreck. We'll see what happens at Dover. This is one of Truex's high points. This is a Hendrick. I think last time we were there, I was there. Alex Bowman won the race, or no, actually Chase Elliott won it last year. I was there for that one, and I think it was. I could be wrong. It's been a long time. It's been about a year. But anyway, so that was pretty much the end of the Talladega race. Wild, a lot of wrecking, as per usual for a super speedway. I don't know if we'll ever have a perfect clean race on a super speedway. I would like to see more competition and racing and back and forth on these cars. I know one of the guys listening to this podcast, he comes out and says, we'll take the restrictor plates off, put smaller wheels on them, let these cars fly around here, and let them decide on how fast they want to go. Don't restrict them on things. And, I think I've told him this. I don't know if that's fully the right way. I totally understand what he's saying, and it would be wild and fun to see that and see who would have enough gall to actually keep going and push it on the edge, or push it too far and the car go crazy. I don't know how that would go with a lot of the racing, especially with a lot of these guys on these engines and this car itself. But moving on to the standings of the Cup Series, Christopher Bell's leading Kyle Larson, Kyle Busch, Chastain, Reddick, Byron, Harvick, Logano, Stenhouse, and Truex round out your top 10 with that. We'll see what happens at Dover again. We're going short track, and then we come up to Kansas, and then we go into Darlington. Again, we're starting to get a lot of these throwback races because Darlington's like the throwback race. Starting to get a lot of these come pop up, and we'll see what happens. Those are kind of always fun to watch and look at the throwback race stuff. We did have a penalty pop up last week that it was Austin Dillon. Austin Dillon got a $100,000 fine and a 4-race suspension for some of his crew. L1 penalty was given for the violation of the overall assembled vehicle rules related to the underwiring of the assembly and hardware. He also lost 60 points and 5 playoff points. So I don't know what you do to mess with the underwiring assembly or whatnot. But that happened. And, he got caught. Ryan Priest's car got taken back to the R&D center. It was more or less to see how everything happened with that wreck. But, who knows? They could find something and penalize him. A couple other cars got taken back as well. I can't remember them off the top of my head. But, didn't even finish. We'll go back over. So Kyle Busch ended up winning that race. I don't know if I had mentioned that. This is his second win with RCR in the new season. I don't know. That kind of makes you question what's going on with Joe Gibbs and how everything's going. So we were talking last week about the NASCAR 75. We got a couple more drivers that got put on there as well. Chase Elliott got named to NASCAR 75 greatest drivers. Carl Edwards, Ron Hornaday Jr., to just name a few. They got put on there. So, this list is starting to take shape. It's just a list of, I don't know who's compiling it besides NASCAR, if it's got any input from other people and so on. So anyway, that's pretty much it. We're going to be going to, again, I said Dover coming forward. This is the Worth 400. Everything starts at 2:00 on Sunday, the 30th. Probably seeing green flag drop around 2:30. So we'll catch that race. It'll be on FS1, PRN, and so on. So, hey everybody, thank you for listening to this podcast. I hope you like, share, and pass it along. Hopefully we can expand this more and do some more things with this, and decide just me talking about the races and my opinions, get some other people's opinions on this as well. So anyway, I appreciate you guys listening. I hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and stay safe out there. Be good.